what inspired you to create this series? Well, several years ago, I acquired a small little point-and-shoot camera that had been modified to shoot in infrared light rather than the normal spectrum of light that we see. And it was a pretty steep learning curve at first, but as I started working with it, I really started taking it with me and photographing a number of different things as I started to learn how to use this particular medium of photography. And one year I was coming back from visiting my dad out in Albuquerque. I was flying from Albuquerque back to Memphis, and since there wasn't just a whole lot to do on the airplane except listen to some music and look out the window and watch the world go by, I started shooting some infrared images out of the window of the airplane. And as I began to think about it and look at the images that I had made, it occurred to me that it was similar to re-seeing the landscape and re-seeing the world in ways that were similar to what a lot of the Impressionist and Post-Impressionist painters were seeing back in the latter part of the 19th century. They were moving away from academic styles of painting. They were being influenced by the Industrial Revolution and the science of that time, and as a result they were painting the landscape in very different ways. And this particular style of painting was known as en plein air, that is outdoors, out of the studio, in the environment. So the comedian in me said, well, I'm on a plane and I'm in the air, so I began to call the series En Plein Aire. But it's moved much past that sort of humorous way of thinking about it, because it really is a different way of seeing the landscape. Infrared light is something that we don't see. We're normally seeing normal colors and normal spectrums of light, but infrared is something completely different, and it's reflecting off of different landscapes differently. It's different depending on the atmosphere that we're in, whether it's cloudy or sunny, and it depends on the things that are reflecting that light. So it's a constantly new way of seeing the landscape. It's constantly a new way of seeing the world. It changes our understanding of what's around us, that we don't always see everything that we think we see. There are things that are hidden, things that are only revealed when we're looking through the art of the camera. That was true in the latter part of the 19th century also, as photography was starting to gain a lot of influence over the way other artists were seeing the world, because the camera could focus in ways that the human eyes can't. It could freeze motion in the way that our brains can't freeze motion. So all these things were being integrated into painting, and now I'm sort of reintegrating them back from painting into photographic medium. So it's a constantly new way of making images about our understanding of the world. So how does the infrared camera affect the ways this work should be read or interpreted? Well, it is seeing light that can't be seen. It's seeing, sort of uncovering a layer of our environment that wouldn't be seen otherwise. So we have to reposition ourselves against the landscape and start to think of things that challenge us, that intrigue us, maybe scare the hell out of us. And by seeing the world in a different way, we come to terms with our own place in the world in a different sort of way. So it's not just to be seen as beautiful color or intriguing compositions. It's meant to engage the viewer in a very different sort of way, understanding how his or her place in the world is different because of seeing in a new sort of way, in a new light, so to speak. Do you have any other series or works that focus on the natural environment or interesting ways of seeing? I've been photographing in Japan since 1986, mainly photographing Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines and the environments around those areas. And those are very sacred places. They're places where we sort of refresh and reinvigorate our philosophical selves, our spiritual selves. The land is meant to be experienced in a very holistic and natural sort of way. So I think that series of work also comes into this particular infrared project, in that every time we go out into the world, we're going to see it a different way. Every time we look at a photograph of a place we've been, and then see that place again in real life, we're not always going to see the same thing. Things will change. Our experiences will have changed. Our understandings will have changed. The environment itself will have changed. So photography is a way of experiencing those changes in a way that can be shared very readily with others, but also it can be experienced on a very personal sort of level. Ansel Adams said there are always two people in every photograph. That's the photographer and the viewer. So even if those two aren't seen, they are there, they are present. And the viewer always has to bring his or her own experiences and his or her own understanding of the world into the viewing of any photograph, whether it's landscape, portraiture, still life, whatever it might be. So there are a number of series that I work on that I think encompass the same sort of fascination with the world as the On Plein Aire project does. And something that I'll certainly continue to photograph in many different forms, whether it's film or black and white, color, infrared, digital, whatever it might be. New tools to bring new insights, new ways of seeing to a world that we think we might understand, but question when it's seen in a new form, a new way of thought. So what natural elements are your favorite to capture from this height with the infrared camera? Well, seeing that I don't have much control over where the plane is going, it's really the pilot that sort of gears what I see out of the window. But I'm looking for compositions. I'm not really looking at any particular landform or anything of that nature. It's how it all integrates together. It can be the way the horizon is seen, between the way it matches the earth and sky. It may be fields that are geometrically laid out. It may be the way rivers sort of wind through the landscape. And I look for compositions. I don't really focus my attention on any particular landform or any particular way of seeing it. I do depend on altitude, though. At 35,000 feet or so, there's not a lot that can be seen that clearly. Everything is sort of a blur. But as we start to land, or just after taking off, the landforms become much more integrated into what my compositions can produce. So it's a short sort of window of time, unless we're circling before landing. I have to sort of shoot quickly. Sort of shoot it all and edit later and see what I may have actually accomplished. Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes the light at that particular moment isn't that good. Infrared is a very fickle way of working. It changes all the time. So sometimes I have to accept that I did get nothing, and then other times I can revel in the fact that almost everything worked out pretty well. So I'm looking at the world. I'm not really centering on any one particular piece of it at all.